Hi, so I'm going to explain how I usually edit my pictures. So colors are always not, colors doesn't really require too much change in my pictures because the white balance is always kind of right. Obviously it does need a little bit of change, but not as much. So take a look at this picture right here. So the first thing that I'm going to do here, I'm actually editing in a camera raw in Photoshop. So that is the actual exposure. I'm going to add a little bit more of light. This picture has some shadows right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a little bit of shadows, but not too much because that looks absolutely terrible. So my shadows, I never pass 5 or 6, never too much because that looks terrible. So I barely touch the shadows, a little bit, and then the highlights. So this area has lots of light. So let's actually lower the highlights. I lower about anywhere between 10 and 20, depending on the picture. I lower the whites as well because when I lower the whites, I get details too. So I'm going to lower, obviously, but depends in the picture, right? But in this case, I am going to lower the whites a little bit. And then my contrast is always to the right, but never too much because that is terrible. So my contrast is anywhere between like 10 and 20, depending on the picture, depending on the color. The blacks is always to the negative, but again, you gotta be careful. You can't go too much. So it's about like 10 and 20 again, minus 10 or minus 20, somewhere between that line right there. I actually don't touch any of this, the texture, the clarity, the dehaze. I don't touch it. If I do touch the dehaze, then it's going to be very, very, very subtle. It's going to be like 1 or 2, but most of the times I don't even touch it. Vibrance, I do put like basically +3, and then I lower the saturation about like -3. That's what I do. So basically I'm done with the basic exposure. The other thing that I do click optics, and that's to basically correct the distortion in the lens. So these two boxes I check under optics. Then I go to in most cases I go to geometry to make the picture straight. But in this case there's no line, so basically I don't need to do anything. Now this is done. Maybe I need a little bit more of light. As I see the skin, I feel like the skin is a little too red, so maybe I need to lower a little bit the white balance to around 66, but obviously that's going to depend in the picture that I take, right, in the picture that I'm editing. Add a little bit of tint, but not too much, always like very little that I do. All right, so I feel like that picture is actually good. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So let's analyze what's the problem here. The problem here is the lines not being straight. The problem here is many distracting elements in the background. But let's begin with exposure. Same thing. I'm going to see exposure. How's the lighting? Well, this is telling me lighting is not bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually in this case going to add a little bit of contrast. Then I'm going to lower the blacks because the blacks also allow me to get a little bit more contrast. Now the dress in this case has lots of light and you can barely see the detail. See? So what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to lower the highlights because that will give me details in the dress. But I can't go crazy lowering the highlights, even though that helped me a lot. But so I'm going to lower the highlights. In this case, I'm going to go 20. I'm going to lower the whites as well. Not too much, but in this case, I feel like around 20 would be good. I like the white balance. I don't really have to change a lot, except that perhaps it's a little bit too yellowish. So I'm going to push a tad to the blues. I'm going to put a little more color, a little more tint. I have the picture. I feel this is good. Exposure is good. Or perhaps I need a little bit more exposure. Let's go back again to optics to correct exposure of the lens. Good. And then in this case, I do go to geometry. So this is a very important step. So in geometry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these lines straight. So first I can do manually and it works, but it never works well. I can do these horizontal and vertical lines. It works, but it never works well. So manually is the best thing to do. And to go to manual, I go like this. So then I make a straight line from there to this, just follow the line basically. I'm actually in a different computer, so I'm not used to this computer right here. So it's a little odd. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can do this. It's around there. That's one line right there. Now the next line, this is supposed to be straight as well. So I'm going to do another line right here. That's good. That's fixing the problem. Now I'm going to go also vertical. So that will solve the problem better. And then I'm going to do the other line as well, because then that will solve the whole problem. So now this looks a lot better, way better. Now that I cannot apply to this one, like to this picture. That has to be done on its own. So at least the lines, right? But I feel like maybe let's try these two. Let's try these two pictures to see what happens. So let's try to sync the settings. Let's see if that works. So this was the picture. Let's see, we sync the settings. It's not bad at all. It's not bad at all, but I feel like I do need more lighting in this picture. So let's put a little bit more lighting. In this case, I feel like the face is a little too yellowish. But let's see, what was the beginning? 63 was the temperature. I'm going to lower to perhaps 61.5. It looks good. Lots of light in the dress. So I'm going to lower a little bit the highlights. I'm going to lower a little bit the whites. I'm good with that. I can increase a little bit of the vibrance in this case to get more color in the sky. I think this is looking good. So now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to optics, because I sync the settings from the previous picture. So this is all done. But the one thing that was not done is the geometry. So now I have to make the lines straight. And this is a very, very important process, because of the buildings are always tilting to one side. So I have that. I know that this is another line that has to be straight. So I have those two lines straight. Now, good. Obviously, because of the distortion of the lens, then, because I'm shooting with a wide lens, maybe making the horizontal lines is not really such a great idea. But let's try. Let's try. See, what happened here is that in these edges, the computer basically cropped the picture, right? So in this case, I don't mind the picture tilting back. So in this case, as long as the horizontal lines are straight, then for me, it works. Okay, so I'm done with this one. I like the temperature, I like the color, I like the whole thing. Later on, I'm going to do something else. Right now, I'm working in camera raw. So let's go back to the next one. Let's see this picture. This is just a sample, okay? It's a sample that we're doing. So let's actually do the very same thing. Like basically, let's apply the same settings. Let's see if that works for this picture. So apply previous settings. Good, actually worked well, because the face was kind of yellowish before. And now once I apply the previous settings, I like that better. I feel like this time though has too much light. So I'm going to lower a little bit the light. I'm going to lower the highlights so I get more detail in the dress. I'm going to lower the whites to get more detail in the dress. I feel that that's actually looking very good. The tint I can perhaps increase a little bit. Now I'm all set, because we actually optics, we can, try to fix the distortion of the lens. Now the next thing that's very important will be geometry in this case. And again, we have different lines here, so we have to make these lines straight if we can. So let's see. That's there. Here's another straight line that's supposed to be straight, and that will be there. And that will change. I actually modify a lot the picture. So you gotta be careful. Sometimes you need to fine tune between these two things. Okay, so that actually it's not working for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for another line that's straight. So this pillar and this pillar should be better. And it's still not working. Let's actually try to do a small modification there. Still not working. Let's make the other line. Let's see if that will fix the problem. It's fixing the problem little by little, but we don't want to have these white spots here in this area. We don't like that. So that actually didn't work, so not a problem. Let's go back. In this case, I'm going to erase all the lines that I did. And let's actually try it auto. Let's see what does auto. Good. I feel like this fixed a little bit. Now, sometimes the other thing that I want to do is I want to make a straight line. So in that case, I can press A and just use the ruler and make a straight line in there. That actually will work better for me. I'm going to crop the image there, so that it's better. But you know what I mean. Gotta work on this to see what what you can do. But the lines can be leaning back. It has to be, especially the horizontal line, it has to be straight, whenever possible, because it's never the same thing. Okay, good. So let's say this was like the basic things done. So let's open the images in Photoshop now. I was in Camera Raw, and now I'm going to open in Photoshop. So here's the picture. Now what I have to do is several things. Let's begin with the first picture. Okay, this is the first picture. So one thing that I gotta do here is this. I have to work in her skin. Plenty of little dots in her skin, so we gotta work on that. So we have to work on this. So this will have to be removed. Let me see. Actually, what I want to do is I want to do this, so yeah, the way you see it. So these dot, no, that's not what I mean. B is for brush, like that. Those little dots, those they need to be removed. But that's because this is a close-up of the face. You see that's a close-up of the face, so it looks good. The other thing that we can also do is I can select with the W. I can select with a quick selection tool. I can select parts of the dress and then create a curves adjustment and just lower the amount of light in that area that looks that has too much light. So I can lower a little bit. Obviously, gotta be little, can't be too crazy. I'm going to use filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to put about 25 pixels, so that way we blur the area where we did it. So it's not bad. If I feel like it's too much, then I can lower the intensity of Photoshop there. I feel that this picture is good. As long as I clean the face and everything, I think I'm good. Let's do the next one. The next one is this one. Now, this picture has some problems here. And some of these problems can be, for example, these right here, that these will have to be clean. These two, it's not necessary to have, so that will also need to be Photoshop. Little dots here and there can also be annoying, but it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be crazy, but some of those areas will need to be Photoshop. Again, here what I can do is I can select the faces, right? I can select the faces. I can create a curves adjustment layer, and I can do a little bit of light. I can add a little